What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So it's been a while since we've had a full Nintendo Direct. So long, in fact, some have actually questioned if Nintendo's just done with the overall idea of having a couple of larger directs throughout the year. Well, a job listing was found on Nintendo's own website, started making the rounds, and got people really excited. It turned into more of a story than I thought it would be, but looking at it, it just seems to be more reassurance that Nintendo's not done with that typical direct format just yet, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we're going to talk about what appears to be a bigger PS5 game that was being teased, and it's the one that Nate keeps talking about. Oh, and apparently Amazon isn't done making games just yet. It's gonna be one of those mornings. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're gonna start today with Stubbs the Zombie. And this was an interesting game from 2005 on the original Xbox. It was backwards compatible on the Xbox 360, but not on the Xbox One or the Series X or the S, and instead it looks like it's going to be making its return, similar to what we saw with like Destroy All Humans, I guess, where it's going to get a remaster of some sort. This was spotted by True Achievements, where they posted the entire achievement list, 1,000 gamer score, 36 different achievements with a release date of March 16th. Now, the biggest thing I remember with this game, outside of the idea of you being a zombie and causing mayhem and all of this, was their marketing push for it was that it was created with the Halo engine. I think it was on like the back of the box. They might have even put it on the front of the box for a couple of the editions that you would buy, but that's what they did. They pushed it along because Halo at the time was super hot with Halo 2 and all this, so why not put that on the back or the front of the box and all this. But I mean, the idea of the game was pretty fun because you were a zombie who'd use all these different body parts to do different things, whether it's take over humans or you would throw your guts at people, and it was pretty cool. And the fact that it's coming out apparently March 16th, so next month, being done by Aspire, we'll be keeping an eye on that one. So I guess just look out for Stubbs the Zombie next month. It's made on the Halo engine. Also, we got a bit more insight into when we can expect Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4, I guess when we can't expect it. According to Activision in their investors call, neither game will be coming out this year in 2021. I'm a little surprised on the side of Overwatch 2 because Diablo 4, we just talked about how apparently Vicarious Visions was being absorbed into Blizzard to work on that and try to get that game to the finish line. So it didn't sound like that one will be coming out in the next 12 months or anything, but Overwatch 2 was kind of being mentioned as an unconventional sequel where the PvP side that's being added will also be added to Overwatch 1 and they can all play against each other. The story elements appear to be the big thing that would set Overwatch 2 apart with kind of the player versus enemy side. So that one, a bit surprised that it's not coming out this year for Activision, so I guess the earliest we could expect either of them would be in 2022. Oh, and this is a pretty cool story. It looks like there will be a new Lego set coming out, I assume this year, for Sonic the Hedgehog. But the best part is how this all came about. It was through the Legos Ideas section where you can submit different ideas and concepts for a Lego set, and I guess if there's enough voting and backing for it, it'll happen. And check this set out here. This was done by 24-year-old UK Sega fan Viv Grinnell, and they say, "I've been invested in the world of Sonic for almost my entire life, and it's such a perfect fit for the LEGO system that I spent about a year rallying support for it to happen. Having 10,000 people back my design with overwhelming enough, even with friends and family behind me, but having it to be selected for further development was the most exciting secret I have ever had to keep." And it looks really, really good there, so awesome job on that. And I would expect this maybe to have more information put out there later on this year because it's going to be the Sonic 30th anniversary, I believe, at this time. And there was also a few others in there. I know the big one that people were mentioning that was in that like Legos idea section was the Metroid side. And hey, there's a Metroid anniversary coming up, so I guess you never know. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Direct, specifically the larger Nintendo Directs. We've had partner showcases, we've had the Direct Minis, we've had the Pokemon Directs and all of this, but what about that full Nintendo Direct where they say, hey, tune in for 35 or 40 minutes and we're just gonna show you all these really cool Switch games all at once, first party, third party, and you'll get that one more thing at the end. Maybe they'll open it strong with something sizable. And that hasn't happened. It's been a lot of smaller announcements on like Twitter, just randomly it just pops up, hey, here's Paper Mario, right? Like that was something that just popped up one day. So looking at this, it's interesting to see that Nintendo, they haven't really forgot about the Nintendo Direct yet, at least not on their website under their careers page. Now, according to the job listing for a new associate AV producer role, it says may assist with filming live action footage for use in Nintendo Directs and other content marketing initiatives. So everyone who was really thinking the Nintendo Direct was gone for good, because we've heard Furukawa mention, hey, the Direct, it's very effective, and it is. Whenever there's a Nintendo Direct, I mean, really, the internet kind of stops and pauses and watches, and then we'll see different things trend on Twitter, but every time there's a Direct, you can bet Nintendo will trend on Twitter, especially if they do have like a big Smash announcement, right? Or if there's a massive announcement for like Breath of the Wild 2 or a sequel to Breath of the Wild is in the works. All those things do tend to top the charts on Twitter when it comes to conversation. So it does still work. He did mention though, hey, you know what, times change and maybe we have to move away from that format. I don't know if it's because like everyone else started doing it too with like State of Play and Microsoft kind of started doing theirs. But really what's going on now with the Nintendo Direct and why it's been kind of absent is, I mean, to be honest, just because of COVID. Like remote work has really put a damper on things, I'll say, when putting these together. So it's much easier when it comes down to getting third parties on board and first party and all this stuff coming together. Because if you look at a larger Direct, there typically is a lot of stuff that has to happen there. I mean, think about all the announcements they do, and then they kind of reel off this sizzle reel of all these different games. And you go through and you count them up, and you're like, wow, there's like 20 something games in here. There's a lot of studios to have to talk to and come together to create this 35-minute or so pre-recorded video. So with that in mind, and the remote work really making it hard for Nintendo to get a big-time Direct done and out there, it's just been easier for them to say, okay, when do we want to do a Smash character? Okay, Sakurai, go ahead, and you could film that at home or in the office if you can get there, and we'll put that up on its own. We'll do the Twitter announcements. We'll do the partner showcases if third parties are ready to go on board. We'll do the indie showcases, but I do think we'll get back to a point where, yes, the Nintendo Direct will make a return. It's just too strong of a marketing tool to not use it. It's just been tough over the last, 12 to 14 months to bring everything together here. And in fact, I still think it's going to be a little while. I was trying to figure out when they would do the next Nintendo Direct. It might be in March or April, but really looking at this, February is going to be about Pokemon. It just will. Like the next Direct, I would say, is going to be a Pokemon Direct. That's not to say you couldn't throw like a mini or some other announcements just kind of sprinkled in there on Twitter. But the fact that Nintendo will probably want to step out of the way and let Pokemon go means that most of February is probably not going to be possible for a full-scale Direct. And yeah, it could fall to March, April. It could fall all the way to June when we would expect to have like E3 and all of this. Maybe that's where they slot it. But yeah, it's still going to be, I think, a little while before the pandemic situation, remote work, all that stuff subsides, and they can at least get to the point where they can get together and film in studio and make it work. But yeah, Nintendo Direct's not gone just yet. It is good to see them reference it here. That again added reassurance for that fact, but it's still going to be a little while. Next up, let's talk about Akira Yamaoka, who is actually the composer from Silent Hill and just got done working on The Medium, because he appeared in an interview on YouTube and may have dropped a tease about a certain game that's coming up, something that Nate has been talking about quite a bit, like constantly whenever we bring it up with him. He still thinks it is happening, and that is Silent Hill on the PlayStation 5, and that would be Sony going to Konami and getting the rights to that one. Well, let's take a look at what was said on this podcast. Now, this was on the Hub podcast. I will link this down below in the sources if you want to go back and watch it as well, where Akira says sometime around the summer, and that the project might be a game people have been hoping to hear about. And really, we've been talking about Silent Hill since like the Game Awards. Really, that was, I think, the first shot realistically they had to announce it, because at this time there's been a lot of talk about it in the background, and it just seems like, okay, when are they finally going to announce it? Because I don't think it's coming out necessarily in the next year or two. Like, this could be something that is like late 2022. And I know it hasn't officially been announced yet, but wow, there's been a lot of talk about Silent Hill. And I think a lot of it has to do with Sony and Konami actually coming to an agreement that Sony would take care of making the game, and Konami would just kind of hang out, which they just posted their financials, and they're making plenty of money on the side with like their gambling machines and games side and all of that. they probably are like, well, we'll just make whatever we can by licensing these IPs out. Why would we spend time making it if we're already making plenty of money? We'll just get something else from these outside of turning them into pachinko machines. And trust me, I would much prefer Konami do that because I saw what happened with Metal Gear Survive. So we'll see about this. Summertime, maybe a state of play to kind of cap off things. And then at the end, the one more thing is Silent Hill. Next up, let's talk about a couple of interesting patents that were found online for the PlayStation 5, with Sony filing them and then becoming public very recently. And there's some interesting ideas, I guess. We could take a look at this one here to start off with, and it is for VR. However, one thing I've talked about with VR is it's a very isolating experience. If you're someone who's using it in a room with other people, you're basically just by yourself with the headset on, right? You're kind of unaware of other people around you if you have it all set up correctly. Well, this is a way, I guess, that the people around you could interact. You can see a diagram here where it looks like spectators who are on a couch would vote for an object that you would get in the game. And that's not a bad idea to do it that way. It almost looks like they're holding up phones, I guess, or who knows, maybe there'd be a different type of device that you would have with it. Now, these are patents, and generally they are ideas that a company is kind of going through and thinking about, but we have seen patents turn into legitimate uses with different systems from companies. So I think Sony is really working through the process of figuring out what the PlayStation VR 2 is going to be, and having it be something that you can play with other people in the room, I think is something they're going to at least try to work out. This just looks like the kind of an idea that they were throwing around to do it. Now, the other patent is kind of interesting because it could actually be pointing to Sony getting a bit more involved with streaming games, or maybe just cutting down on latency for their controller. Check this out here. This is the overall patent image that they had out, and the description reads, a computer simulation controller includes both a Bluetooth transceiver and a Wi-Fi transceiver. Player input to the controller generates commands that are sent using both transceivers, such that a receiving apparatus such as a game console or a web server can use the first arriving one of the two commands to reduce latency. Now, the DualSense controller latency is already pretty solid. I know the DualShock 4 was very good through its Bluetooth. This could maybe be them saying, okay, what if we had the DualSense have both Wi-Fi and it has Bluetooth, and whenever they press a button, whichever one gets there first is the one that will send the command and the console will recognize. But what if they're also kind of thinking of what Stadia has done, where the controller itself, when you are streaming a game, which they do have PlayStation Now for streaming, that maybe it connects to your router that then goes to the server itself, and you're connecting through that with the controller not connecting to your device. That's something that I think Sony would be looking into as they go along, since they signed that long-term deal with Microsoft and their Azure data centers and all of this. I think streaming is still something that Sony is interested in pursuing further, and who knows, maybe in the future there will be a DualSense controller that they release that you buy and it already has that Wi-Fi side built into it as well as the Bluetooth side. So it could be used for your PS5, or if you're streaming on a device, maybe it's eventually built into a smart TV, it would then connect to your router and kind of bypass your TV to do any of the commands. Something to think about there. In our last bit of news, let's talk about Amazon, as it doesn't look like they are leaving the game development business just yet. At least that's what they're saying right now. Jeff Bezos stepped down as CEO, and in his place, the incoming CEO still seems kind of interested in creating games even after they made something like Crucible. This coming from Andy Jassy, who will be taking over as CEO of Amazon. Some businesses take off in the first year and others take many years. Though we haven't consistently succeeded yet in AGS, Amazon Game Studios, I believe we will if we hang in there. Being successful right away is obviously less stressful, but when it takes longer, it's often sweeter. I believe this team will get there if we stay focused on what matters most. So reading into this quote here, to be honest, what could be happening is they just don't want to rock the boat before they even sit down in the executive chair, and they're saying, oh yeah, we'll look into the Amazon Game Studio stuff. We're going to keep going with it. And then, I mean, a month or two later, hey, Amazon Game Studios is all done. That's it. I mean, Stadia just did it. Google did. And that kind of came out of nowhere after putting together this whole big presentation, you know, bringing out Jade Raymond and all of this, and they were going to make these awesome games. They're going to take advantage of the cloud, and it's gone, right? So looking at this, at least Amazon put out some games. At least they seem to understand that it takes longer than 10 months to do it. Again, Google. So I don't know if they're going to actually ever make good games, because they made Crucible. That game came out, struggled, left closed beta, struggled, went back into closed beta, and then it was canceled and they just refunded everyone. And they're also working on New World, which is like an MMO that I guess is going to come out eventually, but either way, it takes time. You got to build up experience overall, and Amazon isn't exactly a company that's known to make these big AAA games that get these Metacritic 95 plus or anything there. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll continue trying and eventually they'll get a good game out, but otherwise, sure, I could see them taking the Stadia route and just saying, maybe we weren't cut out for game development. I guess the one benefit for Amazon is they have enough money to legitimately just keep trying over and over again. I guess if you keep throwing enough money at a problem, eventually it'll turn into a good game. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, will the PS5 be able to outsell the PS4 total lifetime sales? 60% of you said yes, it will end up being more popular, whereas 40% said no, the PS5 won't catch the PS4 sales. So we're looking at about 115 million or so units that the PS5 would have to sell right now. That's provided the PS4 just stops selling, which I still think they're going to get a couple more million out of that system before it is completely sunset and it's not in stores anymore. So let's say 117 to 118 million will get the PS5 to where the PS4 will end up being. It's going to be tougher, I think, than people realize, especially since when the PS4 came out, the Xbox One tied its shoes together and fell over immediately. The Wii U was the Wii U, whereas now there's a bit more stronger competition around them. The Switch is rolling along and the Series system isn't at least messing up, so like that's good. We'll see though with the PS5. The biggest thing they're having a problem with right now is being able to just make the systems, as they're looking to at least be able to put out in the next fiscal year roughly 14.8 million PS5 systems, but they're still having a hard time with that because the overall shortages on the side of semiconductors and AMD just getting them the chips. So we'll see with the PS5. The good news here is it looks like Sony is all in on this one, and I think they're gonna be bringing in some very interesting third-party exclusives, we'll say. We just talked about Silent Hill, but keep your eyes out going forward for this one. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Fanto saying, would be more than interesting to know how many active PS5 consoles are connected to PSN. Yeah, the majority of that right now are PS4s, absolutely, obviously, because they shipped 4.5 million PS5 systems, and I'd say a fair amount of them are just kind of in people's living rooms or in their garages waiting to be sold on eBay right now. And that is the most frustrating thing for Sony, because they are shipping PS5s that they are losing money on, and they're not going into people's houses. That's the whole point, is to get them then into their ecosystem, but it's sitting in people's garages. So trust me, you don't want that to happen. Sony doesn't want that to happen. The only person that wants that to happen are the resellers and the scalpers who are trying to flip it on eBay. It's a frustrating thing that Sony is dealing with, but I guess on the flip side, that means that your system is also popular enough to sell for like $1,000. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it's the Nintendo Direct. Tell me this, when do you think the next big Nintendo Direct will be? Because it appears that they are still going to do them. You think we're March, April, or waiting all the way until June? And then what do you think about Amazon attempting to make more games? Do you think they'll ever be able to make a good game? And then Silent Hill on the PS5, do you think that's a thing? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.